Hello everyone, David A. Cox here with PCClassesOnline.com, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about social media and small businesses. I've attended quite a few different classes myself about this topic, and what I found was that in a lot of these different classes, it's the same thing every time. It's this individual who's marketed as an expert, who sounds like Krusty the Clown, who's just a little bit too excited about social media, who seems to imply that it's going to make you $1,000,000 and you're going to be an overnight success and you're going to all your videos are going to go viral, and none of that actually happens. That's not the real world. So let's talk about real life social media. I think all of you who have taken our classes before understand that I like to be very real with all of you. So the first thing I want to say before we go into any of these topics is that, look, there's no magic bullet to social media. Will you see on the news every once in a while a company that is doing absolutely insane business because their video went viral? Yes, that is very much the exception to the rule. It's the same odds of you getting your own reality show, okay? There might be a lot out there, but there's a lot more people who don't have it. So what you need to do is make use of what you have, use it correctly, and have a realistic expectation. So here are the different things we're going to be going over today. We have, of course, Facebook, Google, and we're going to be talking about both Google Plus and Google Maps because they now kind of work together. Yelp is especially useful if you're a restaurant. Twitter, MailChimp, and YouTube. Now, we had taught this class live, and I realized that there were a couple things I wanted to mention that I forgot to bring up. So I decided to re-record this class. So we are not live right now. This is pre-recorded, but that way I have the kind of ability to add in everything that I didn't during the actual class. So, that being said, the first goal of social media is really to create your brand. Okay, it's to get it away from people thinking of you and more of it as your business. Okay, this is something every small business owner is constantly struggling with, is building the brand. Building the brand. It has its own special identity, and you want it so that when people see your logo, they've got to have that emotional trigger. Okay, they've got to. If you're trying to evoke, whether it's happiness or joy or calmness, something like that, you want to evoke just from them seeing your brand. Let's see here. Some of the other things. You're trying to engage your customers. You're trying to create a conversation. Sorry about the background noise here. You're trying to create a conversation that takes it beyond a store. Okay, so you're trying to get it so that not only have they maybe already come into your store, but you want them to keep coming back. And that's how we use social media as a tool. Now, one of the areas where I tend to disagree with most of the quote-unquote social media experts out there is about money. Okay, putting money into social media is not something I recommend for most people because it is expensive. And at the end of the day, putting money into social media is only worth it if it makes you money. And very seldomly does it ever do that. It can help build a following, but if it doesn't make you money, you don't want to put money into it. And remember, time is, after all, money. So if you're going to put time into it, just don't go nuts. So with that being said, I think I've said all my little disclaimers here. Let's first start talking a little bit about Facebook. Okay, I'm going to increase the size of the font here so you guys can see it all a little bit better. Now you're obviously looking here at my Facebook page. It's kind of ironic. This is a business that I have liked on Facebook that I think does a tremendous job of how they market their social media. This is a little restaurant that we have up in Cape Cod called Karoo Cafe. It's a South African restaurant, and they're like one of the top places on TripAdvisor. They're amazing on Yelp. But I want you to take a look at what they're doing here, okay? The big thing is they've got this beautiful widescreen photo here for their cover photo, okay? Their little profile image here is very distinguishable. You know, if you look at it, you're going to associate it with them. For a lot of businesses, the cover photo is a perfect place to put a photo of your storefront, okay? Unless you have a really good logo or you have a custom graphic designed like this, okay? Putting out a little bit of money for a custom cover photo is probably worth it, okay? Because it won't be that expensive. And that's going to ultimately get you more likes. And if you look here, I want you to notice what they're doing. as they're advertising their business. They're using a lot of photos. They're constantly interacting with their customers. Okay, all sorts of different things here. These are professionally shot photos. If you know how to use an iPhone, if you know how to shoot a good photo, that's good enough too. They do a lot of research in, carrying their products, so they'll go traveling over to South Africa. They're posting all of this. Now, what's great about this is that none of this part costs money. Okay, this is just taking the time to create something that people want to interact with. They want to be a part of it. The other thing I love that these guys do, which not enough businesses, in my opinion, do, is they actually have a sticker on their window and it says, like us on Facebook. It's so simple. And yet just by putting it out there, guess what? People do. Now, let's talk a little bit about Facebook advertising. Okay, now there's a couple different ways that you can advertise. I'm going to show you one that I was involved with recently. Okay. All right, so this is a magazine that we have here in Key West. I'm going to, give me 1 second here. I'm going to close the door. It's getting a little noisy. Sorry about that. Okay, so this is a magazine that I work with here in Key West. And this photo I shot, ironically, with my iPhone. You can see here they have 634 likes. Now, one of the questions when you start to do Facebook advertising is, how much do you want to pay for advertising? Well, to get this many likes cost me $22, and that's it. Because everything else was word of mouth and just by putting up good posts that I knew people would enjoy. Even though this is a magazine, I'll post on their behalf sometimes, funny videos, things that I know people are going to enjoy. And as more and more people interact with it, their friends see that interaction and ultimately they like it as well. Okay, so that's one little trick that I've always used. Now let's talk about actually creating an ad. Okay. When you want to create an ad for your Facebook page, you click right up here at the top right where it says Ad Manager. Now, when you want to do this, you can direct people to one of two different locations essentially, your website or your Facebook page. Now, if you want to make money off of this, then you want to send them probably to your website. This is ultimately going to be determined by what kind of business you have. If you have a page and you just want to grow your following, that's where you want to send them to your page. You're always going to have more success sending people to your page. Okay? Obviously, it doesn't cost them anything to like you, and it's a good chance to maybe make money down the road. So if you're going to do it, send them to your page. Okay. From here, you have three different options. You can do the Get More Likes option, Promote Page Posts, let's try saying that 5 times fast, and Advanced Options. Now, I actually prefer Advanced Options over Get More Likes because I can use this feature here, CPC, cost per click. So I can really determine how much I'm paying per person for them to like my page. So let's switch over to that option, and I'll start to show you kind of what it looks like. From here, you're going to start to figure out who are you going to target. So, of course, we can do country, city, state, zip code. If you do zip code, you can say within a certain radius of that zip code. Your age, obviously, someone who's 13 is not very likely to become an actual customer, at least not immediately, depending on what brand you have. So you really want to try to figure out your key demographic. It's a good idea to just get out a piece of paper before you do any of this and just make a list. Write up a profile of your pretend common customer. Where do they shop? What things interest them? What television shows do they watch? What music do they listen to? All of these different pieces of information can help lead you to find your key customers. Okay? Male or female. Now, this part here is where it gets really interesting. Precise interests. And this is where it is up to you to pay attention to your customers. The example I always tell people about that is I discovered when I was working for Apple that there was a interesting tie between Apple customers and people who shop at Whole Foods and also LL Bean. They're usually the same people. So if you have an Apple product, you are very likely that you also shop at Whole Foods. It's just one of those things where it's usually the same type of personality is going to also be a fan of that brand. So let's say I'm doing it here. You type in Whole Foods, and you can see here that they have a market, an audience of 4.4 million. Now, when you target people who like Whole Foods who also live in your city, you're going to start to really narrow it down. So if I do it here, for example, and I say Key West, which is probably pointless since we don't actually have a Whole Foods in Key West. Let's expand this to 50 miles. Check. Okay, so that's only 460 people. So that's not really big, but then again, this is Key West. It's not exactly a very large area. So you can use this and it'll start to give you suggestions for other brands that are very similar to Whole Foods. In this case, Costco, Trader Joe's, that kind of thing. Okay, so you go through here and you can put in as many as you want, people who like these brands. Now you can do broad categories. I don't really recommend it. Okay, it's just a little too broad. Now, some people, for some businesses, this might be useful to you. You can actually target how people are accessing Facebook. So you can, for example, target only people who are accessing Facebook from an iPhone 5, as an example. You can target people who are only using an Android, and even what specific device. Okay, so if you're making a app for Android, obviously it's no point in you advertising to people who have an iPhone. You would want to just target people who are using an Android device. Okay, you can check out some of the other things they have here. Connections, I would strongly recommend that you use only people not connected to your page. It'd be kind of silly to target people who have already liked you. And then you can start to target your budget, figure out your budget here. Now, you can either do per day or you can do a lifetime budget. If so, you say, I want to do 1 month or 2 months or however often you want. And you can click down here and put in how much you want to pay for every single time someone clicks on the link and likes your page. So it's up to you how much you want to spend on it. Like I said, just be aware that the conversion rate from Facebook likes to sales is incredibly low. All right. There is a local business person here in Key West who's in a similar business to what I'm in. And this gentleman has, I think, well over 2,000 likes at this point. And I was talking with him recently and about trying to figure out what percentage of those people have actually purchased something because of his Facebook page. And you have to figure for him to get 2,000 likes, he had to spend probably at least $2,000, okay? Because not every single person who clicks on the link is going to actually end up liking the page. So I don't think it's really worth it for most people. It's not bad for your ego to have a lot of likes, but your ego doesn't make you money, okay? So just be aware of that. And that is a little bit about Facebook advertising. More than anything, it's about trying to put out that relevant content that people like and not necessarily all about your business, okay? You want to also just touch on topics that interest people, things that get them sharing it with their friends, okay, no matter what it is. Let's move on and talk a little bit about Google at this point. Now, Google's an interesting topic because they have not just Google, the search engine, they also have Android, the Droid phones that are out there, and Google Plus. Google Plus, in case you haven't heard of it, is a somewhat newer social network that really hasn't taken off much. I have an account with them. I never, ever use it. There is still a reason to have your page, a page for your business on Google Plus, and the reason has to do partially with the way the Android phones work, and also partially with a device coming out from from Google rather, called Google Glass. You've probably seen the commercials, the ads on the internet, but it's basically a pair of glasses that will connect to the internet and do all sorts of different stuff. The problem with the Google Plus social network is that no one's ever on it. I, at any point, can pretty much go into Google Plus and none of my friends will be online. So whereas I might have, I think I have 600 or so friends on Facebook, I think I have maybe 80, maybe on Google Plus, and they're never there anyway. So it's still important to claim your page, because if it does take off at any point, you want to make sure you already have it claimed. So this is the big part where Google is really important for social media, okay? You want to make sure that your business can be found by someone searching for it. So when you're on an Android device and you use the personal voice assistant and say, for example, where can I get a pizza? It is using information that comes from Google Maps. Let me make this a little larger so you can see it. Okay, so if you look at the top left of my screen, you'll see here that one of the options here is put your business on Google Maps. Okay, and it's really important that all of you take the time to do this, because it's going to ultimately be how people find you. Now, here's how Google Maps works. I'm actually going to show you my listing here for my local business. Slow today. Okay, let's zoom in so you can see this a little better. Okay, so this is what my page looks like on Google Maps. Okay, and I want you to pay attention to a few different things here. Now, the way that Google Maps ranks, one of the ways it ranks, is based on a rich content factor, which means the more content that you give Google, they are going to reward you by putting you higher on the list. So if you search for Apple computers, I'm usually number 1 or 2, depending on what day of the week it is, I guess. So you want to make sure you give them plenty of photos. Okay, the more photos, the more legit you look as a business. You want to give them, of course, your phone number, your website address, a brief description, okay, of your business. You're able to create categories for, what you do, what you offer. One of our categories is website designer. It's only one of them, but that's the one that got put up at the top. Okay, so you can see here, here's the big part, reviews. Okay, so people can leave reviews for your business, and obviously you want to try to make sure you have as many good reviews as possible. You also want to make sure you have as many reviews as possible. The more number of people who write reviews, believe it or not, regardless of whether they're good or bad, the higher you'll rank, because you look more legit compared to your competition. Okay? So this is really, more than anything, important for people who are searching on their computer, or if they're using an Android device, whether it's a Droid phone or tablet. So that's a little bit about that. It's not a bad idea with this too, and really with any of these social networks. If you have a storefront, put a little sticker on the door or put it by the front desk. Some people will even put it on their receipts. Say, hey, if you had a good experience, leave us a review on Google Maps, or leave us a good review on Yelp, which we're going to talk about next. So let's go over to that right now. Now, I am a very, very active Yelp user. I think it's a great social network for the most part, and I'm going to tell you where it's really handy. So this is very big for restaurants. It's very big for bakeries. To a lesser extent, guest houses and hotels, that kind of thing. But for the most part, restaurants. So the way Yelp works is you use it to find reviews about, like I said, restaurants. So let's say I want to find where I can get sushi in Key West, Florida. Okay, so it's going to show me the different places where I can get it. All right, all these different options here. And you can see that they have different stars listed here, and you can see this one. These two guys are right next to each other almost. I actually did a little bit of social media work for these guys right here. When you typed in sushi in the past, they wouldn't even show up. So I got it so that they would. Now here's the big thing about Yelp. Okay, I'm going to go into Thai Island's listing here as an example. This is how Yelp works differently than Google. Yelp works on a clout factor, which means that if, let's say there's a brand new restaurant in town that has no reviews, and I am a power user, and I've left hundreds of reviews, and I give them a 5-star review. I say, this is the best sushi I've ever had. And then someone else comes in who is brand spanking new to Yelp, and they give it a 1-star review. Because it uses a clout factor, the average is going to be higher than 2.5 out of 5. The reason is my account has higher clout, so it has a little more pull to it. Okay, so you want to make sure that if you are a restaurant and you're putting yourself out on Yelp, you don't just want a lot of reviews. You want reviews to be coming from people who have used it before. Okay, a lot of times what they'll do is if you have a someone who's brand new to Yelp, it will actually not even list it until they leave. I think it's 5 or 6 reviews is the magic number. At that point, they'll start to show up. Okay, they'll have higher clout at that point. But that's something to be careful about. You want to make sure you have good reviews, but also that they're coming from experienced users. It is also, of course, very important that you have a lot of color photos. Give them as much information as you possibly can. Okay, your hours, do you have delivery? All these different little things here, you'll see. And that's a little bit about Yelp. The other key thing I want to say about Yelp is that if you're using an iPhone and you say, Surrey, where can I get sushi? Well, it comes from Yelp. That's where they get their listings as far as location goes. It all comes from Yelp. Now, if you are a business owner and you are just now creating your listing on Yelp, one of the things you should expect, this is really important to know, you will get a phone call from the people at Yelp. And they have sort of a premium version where you can get featured and there'll be ads for your business on your competitor's listing. Do not sign up for it, in my opinion. It is not worth it. It is insanely overpriced. I know up in Cape Cod there were businesses that were paying $4,000 a year, which is outrageous when it's a 12-week season, to get listed. And I won't even do business with those people, because if you're going to spend $4,000 promoting your business on a social network, which, by the way, that doesn't even do anything as far as boosting your rating on an iPhone or anything like that. It's crazy. If you have a Yelp listing, you do not need to pay for it. Okay, just go with the free version and you're golden. Next, we're going to talk about Twitter. Okay, now Twitter is a tough one. Twitter is, in my opinion, not for most people. Okay, here's who it is for. If you are a bakery, if you are in a business that has a product that is going to go out, okay, so for example, if you're a bakery, you maybe have a large batch of pastries that you've got to get rid of, or you're going to end up throwing them out. You can tweet out to your followers, hey, 50% off when you mention this tweet, and you come in the next 2 hours. It's a great way to get a quick little blast of information out to your followers. The other business that's great for Twitter is businesses like these food trucks that you'll see in a lot of the major cities, in Boston, New York City, LA, where they go to different locations every day. They will let their followers know where they are via Twitter. Okay? For most other businesses, Twitter is not worth the time or the money. And time is money. So if you're going to use Twitter, make sure you're in one of those businesses. Definitely, put it. It's got to be urgent information that's got to cause people to act. Photos do help. A really nice background page. You can see here what we do. Obviously, I don't use Twitter much, okay, compared to other people out there. It's also great if you're something like a comedian, like Joan Rivers, as you can see here on mine. So it's not for everyone, but it is for some people. For most of you who take our classes, this is not going to be for you. The next is a rather interesting, it's not really a social network, but it is a social tool. Okay, and it's called MailChimp, and if it looks at all familiar to you, I'm actually going to just play this animation for you. It's because it's what we use when we send out our little newsletters, and that's what it is. It's for sending out an e-blast to your customers. Now, I'm going to share with you, oops, sorry about that. I'm going to share with you a little trick that I learned and tried out with the business last year, and it was the most successful campaign we've ever done. It was astronomical what it brought in. So do you remember when you were a kid and you went to the science museum, you probably went to every single exhibit that had a button or a screen, something that allowed you to interact with it. And it didn't really matter what it was. If it had a button, you were going to press it. Okay, at least that's how I was. Well, here's what we did with MailChimp that I found fascinating. I was working with a museum that has a pretty large following, but they wanted to keep in touch with their, fans and try to get them to come back again the next year when they were in town. So we tried this experiment and we deployed an iPad and put it out by the cash register in the gift store, the gift shop. And there's an app that we used. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'll probably find it here in a second. Called Padlock. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't Padlock. Chimpadee-Doo. Chimp-a-d-d-e-e-d-o-o. And it's basically an app that will lock out the iPad so that all they can do is enter in their name, phone number, email address, and get on your mailing list. And what was really interesting was that people don't even think that they're giving out their information. They don't even think that they're being put on a mailing list. It's an iPad. They gravitate towards it. It's like the moth to the flame. Okay? They just immediately go to it and they just start typing in their information. So if you are looking to keep in touch with your customers, this is a really nice trick. By the cash register, you get a little iPad. You can do an iPad mini if you want to keep it nice and compact. It's also got kind of a little bit of a higher cool factor right now. You get a little case that mounts it to the desk so that no one can steal it. And you just let them put in their information. And once a month, once every 2 weeks, you send them a little e-blast. And maybe you offer them a promotion or something like that to come in to keep in touch with you. As many photos as you can in these campaigns. It's really useful. And it's incredible what it can do. The result when we did this experiment was on day one, 350 people put out their information. Now, these guys get about 1,000 to 2,000 visitors a day. So to get 350 on day one was astronomically successful. And I don't even know what their mailing list is at this point. Now, some of you out there may be looking at this and saying, well, what about Constant Contact? That is MailChimp's competitor. Here's the difference. MailChimp is free. Constant Contact, they charge you monthly for. Basically, what you're paying for with Constant Contact is you have the ability to talk to a person to get advice on a campaign. Now, if you need help with that, go for it. Otherwise, MailChimp. Their software is it's not awful. With their new drag and drop options here, which you're seeing the animation on my screen, it's a lot easier than it was in the past. But it takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of it. But it is free. Now, the final social network that I want to talk about is YouTube. And YouTube is, a lot of times people forget about YouTube, but it can be a incredibly easy way to connect with people. And I want to show you a couple examples of this. So with YouTube, these guys I follow. Okay, I'm subscribed, as you can see here, to them. And they put out these short little tutorial videos on creating websites, basically, different design ideas, and how to install these different plugins. Okay, it's kind of a techie thing, but I follow it. And the idea is that everyone out there can be an expert in their own field. If you own a restaurant, it might be, you want to see how to make the most amazing spaghetti sauce ever. And if you have a video camera or even an iPhone, you can make a YouTube video. And what's great with YouTube is that people are going to start to subscribe to you. And so here's what I found. The most successful video I ever did actually was when we were first starting out with PC Classes Online. And I did a search on YouTube to try to find anyone else who had created a tutorial video on how to use the Mac. Really simple, right? So I looked, and all I found were these kids who just their voices hadn't even changed. And I thought, I can do so much of a better job than what they've done. So I created this really thorough video. It's actually in the video library. You've all probably seen it, for those of you who have taken the time to look at it, on how to use a Mac. And I went over all the basics really slowly with good audio, good high quality video. And that I can attribute to over $1,000 in actual sales. I know that video brought in money because I can track it. So if you are willing to take the time, okay, this can be an amazing tool, YouTube. It's so easy to create a video these days, to share it with your friends, have your friends share it. And as long as you can do a good production job, you know what? You can get a following overnight. It's really incredible. Now, what I love about all this stuff here is that everything that I've just shown you does not cost money, okay? There are plenty of people out there who are more than happy to charge you thousands of dollars to, tweet on your behalf. But if it doesn't make money, there's no point in putting any time or money into it, okay? So if you're going to put money, if you're going to put time into social media, make sure that it's going to help you in the end. If you have any questions about this stuff, you can always reach me, David at pcclassesonline.com. I hope you've learned a lot from this, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.